Please welcome to the stage Elizabeth Walker, Mark S. Miller, Vicki Dobbs-Beck, Alyssa Finley, and Jonathan Harmon.
Hello. Are we on? Great. Hi, South by Southwest. Thank you so much for having us. My name's Elizabeth Walker. We are the ILM team here to talk about our work in the immersive space. And we're really so excited to be here today. So thank you for joining us at 10 a.m. I hope everybody's had their coffee. I'd like to quickly just introduce everybody sitting next to me. This is Mark S. Miller. He is our VP of Creative Production. Vicki Dobbs-Beck, who's our VP of Content Innovation, and really leader of all of our strategy and our vision. Queen Bee. We have Alyssa Finley, who's an executive producer with us, and Jonathan Harmon, who is our supervisor of technical art. So we're going to go ahead and get started right at the beginning. This year is actually our 10-year anniversary as a studio, which is hard to believe. And so I wanted to kick it off to you, Vicki, to share some of our origin story. I think knowing, that you spun up a studio within Disney, within Lucasfilm, within ILM. Can you talk a little bit about how the heck you even managed to do that?
Well, actually, the journey began a long time ago. I've actually been with Lucasfilm for 33 years. And in the early 90s, I actually ran a team called Lucasfilm Learning. And at the time, we were doing some really groundbreaking work that was at the intersection of storytelling, interactivity, high-quality visuals and sound, and with the education lens. At the time, the way you did that was with a computer-driven Laserdisc player. This is pre-CD-ROM. So, but I really saw the power of combining all of those elements and in essence had to wait for the technology to catch up. Turns out we were about 30 years ahead of our time. So back in about 2013, we were combining a team from our games group, LucasArts Games, and from ILM, and they were sort of like a little rebel unit doing some R&D in high-fidelity real-time graphics. It really gave us the foundation that allowed us to establish the studio for immersive storytelling, because they were really able to achieve interactive, high-quality visuals and sound. And so at that same time, we were seeing some emerging technologies coming online, particularly virtual reality. And when I first put a DK2 headset on, which was the early Oculus headset, it was mind-blowing. And if you haven't done VR, you must, because it is unlike anything else that I have ever experienced. And even in those early days, we saw the power of what it would be like to put people into worlds. And so the combination of the R&D that had been done, plus these devices coming online, we felt it was a new way to tell stories. And we feel that as Lucasfilm, if there's new ways to tell stories, we should be there. In addition, at ILM, we were also searching for what we call blue ocean. Blue ocean is an area where, where you're defining a new industry. And so that was really how we did it.
Super easy. Miller, I also wanted to kick it to you. You have a very long history in film, very long, starting with Temple of Doom, actually, back in the day, and a really just robust set of credits in film and visual effects. And I'm curious what you've been with Vicki really since day one, and have been very pivotal in helping to build out our portfolio and overseeing all of the creative production. So why did you make that shift in your focus in this area of entertainment at the time?
Do you want me to start like all the way back in the bar outside of Modesto with George Lucas
Absolutely.
in 1972? Yeah, no, that never happened. So 10 years ago, I was working for Lucasfilm, producing a movie that was in development, and I was going to produce a Star Wars movie, and like as happens, the movie went into turnaround and then got canceled, and so I kept coming into work every day and kept my head down a little bit, and about 3 weeks went by, and I was wondering when they were going to come for me, and I actually got into an elevator in the morning with about 5 people, and my boss was on the other side of the elevator, and he's a tall guy, and so am I. So we were looking over all these heads, and he went, "Oh, Miller, I've been meaning to I don't have anything for you. You need, you need to, tomorrow's got to be your last day. You need," and then the door opened, and he got off, and everyone in the elevator kind of looked at me, and it was a little awkward. This one woman goes, "Did you just lose your?" I go, "Yes, I did." She goes, "I don't think he handled that very well." I go, "Don't worry, that's just what he's like." So I didn't know what I was going to do. I was like, "Am I going to go back into visual effects or what?" And then literally the next day, Vicky and Kiri Hart from Lucasfilm called me and said they wanted me to come. That they were starting up ILMxLAB at the time, and they wanted me to come run development and production in the same way that we were doing for the movies, and that was very important to them, that we brought all the same processes and the same attention to detail that we wanted to do. So of course I said yes, and I jumped in. I at the time had only been in a VR headset once years earlier. The device Vicky was talking about, well, Palmer Luckey was touring it around. It had cables and stuff coming out, and unlike Vicky, I did not see anything that made me think it was going to be anything. No one's going to want to like put this toaster on their head and have, and try to see things. But so that had been years before, and so I immediately jumped in and started doing as much VR as I could, and I kept my hands on it, and then quickly realized, oh my God, this is like the platform for storytelling, particularly for interacting with characters, for being put in a place, for being able to feel like you're inside a movie, as I was thinking of it at the time. And when we have a universe, a galaxy like Star Wars to play with, and knowing how our fans would want to be pulled as deeply into that as they could be, it just was the perfect marriage.
Well, it sounds like we're quite lucky that you got fired, so thank you.
Anytime.
And then the next thing I kind of wanted to talk about is, after you guys sort of started working together and coming together, how were you looking at the initial goals of the studio? So how did you start to think about how you wanted our library of work to take shape?
I think, just as Miller just said, one of the things we wanted to do was to invite fans to step inside our stories in ways that had never before been possible. And that sort of vision evolved eventually from this idea of transitioning from storytelling, which is essentially one-way communication, to story living, which is a much bigger idea, where you're in a world making meaningful choices that drive the narrative forward. And these devices, virtual reality and mixed reality, were really uniquely poised to allow us to deliver on that dream. The other thing about it is that storytelling was critical. That was at the core of what we were trying to do, but we wanted to put you at the center of the story, and you become the hero.
Do we want to talk about this?
Yeah.
Can we get that picture up
Yeah,
there?
perfect.
Yeah,
Thank
there
you.
we go. So one of the first experiments we did was called Trials on Tatooine, and literally the elevator pitch for this was, what would it be like to be standing in the desert in Tatooine and have the Millennium Falcon come tearing over your head and then basically land right on top of you? So that was like job one. And so you know, as we do, people just started mocking that up right away, and immediately with the sound and the visuals and everything, we knew we were onto something great. We added a fun little story where R2-D2 rolls out and helps you, gives you a lightsaber. You get to deflect some blaster bolts and take out some stormtroopers in a Star Wars way. But really, it was just our first foray into, let's put you inside of Star Wars in a way that you haven't been before, and it was super fun.
That's great. And I know Charles on Tatooine for us was a very foundational project, absolutely. And we were lucky enough to share that with the world at the time. And I know, haven't forgotten about you guys over there, don't worry. I was curious, you know, at this point in time, if you, this is around 2016, 2017, before you joined the company, what was your first kind of touch point with work from our studio, and did that help bring you in?
So my very first touch point was back in the 90s, actually. I had applied for a job with Vicky at Lucasfilm Learning. I didn't get it, so I had to prepare myself.
My mistake.
I had to prepare myself. So I came from games, and I worked in games for my whole career up until joining ILM, which has been delightful. And I got to work in sort of that intersection between interactivity and storytelling and big IPs. So I got to work on Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, Minecraft, things like that. And then by the time I made my way around to, I had a friend who was working on, he told me all about Secrets of the Empire at the Void. He was working on what turned out to be Ralph Breaks VR. And he said that this little company, ILMxLAB, was doing some really amazing stuff at that same intersection. And so I showed up for a job interview, tried again, and apparently this time made a better case for myself.
My background goes all the way back to VR photography, maybe 25 years ago, doing virtual tours in QuickTime VR and iPix photography using spherical lenses. I did that. That was one of the ways I paid my way through college, art school, and eventually got into film and did film for 20 plus years, moved on to games, worked in AAA games for a while. And at some point, you know, I was seeing a lot of hardware. I got the Google Cardboard. I was experimenting around with all of these devices, and I got a hold of Vader Immortal. And I was absolutely blown away by the scale and presence. There's an early shot in that experience where you get to walk up to Vader. And having been a Star Wars fan my entire life, having Vader stand in front of me and realize that me, the 6'2" pretty big guy, is not that big, standing right in front of Vader, and him, you know, being able to get right next to him, was a feeling unlike anything I'd ever experienced. And pretty quickly, I applied and thankfully got the gig, and have been working with these wonderful people ever since.
Great, and I think that's a perfect segue to our next topic, which is Vader Immortal. If you're not familiar with the project, it's a 3-part narrative series. It's on the MetaQuest, and we released that in 2019. And it really dives into a specific portion of Darth Vader's life and built out some really, really fun narrative. And Miller, you were executive producer on that project. I know that's for us coming from Charles on Tatooine, where we really knew nothing about how to tell story quite yet in virtual reality, and made the leap from a sub 10-minute project to a multiple hour project. I'm so curious how you were able to not only get approval but support from Lucasfilm to build out, you know, canon in such an iconic character.
Yeah, I mean, the word is access, and I think especially in big companies and studios like ours, it's not always something that's that easy to get. And luckily at the time, it was a very open structure at Lucasfilm, and all the directors of episode 7, 8, Rogue One were around in San Francisco at different times. And there was this great woman, Kiri Hart, who was running the story group at the time. And she gave us that access not only to the scripts and the artwork of what was going to be planned for all these movies, but also to the people themselves. We went really deep with Gareth Edwards and with Ryan Johnson in talking about their films and how we might connect with them. And David Goyer, the great writer and director, was my other executive producer on the project. And so we got to go around with Diana Williams from the story group then, and John Gaeta, and the four of us got to go talk to all these directors, really start plotting, you know, and Vader, of course, from the start had always been like, let's tell a story about him. Well, when we found out, can we put this artwork up there? When we found out that he had actually been living in a brutalist castle on the edge of a lava lake in Mustafar ever since the last time we'd seen him, when his limbs were severed and he was becoming him. We had a beautiful gap, blue ocean kind of moment of what's he been doing there for all those years, and we got to fill in that gap. So, and then we take all that story and with the help of the director figure out what that arc is, and then as Alyssa always reminds me, we had to think about verbs. We had to think about what you're doing. It's not just about telling his story, it's who you are, what you're doing at any given moment. So we got to fill in all those great tropes of, I want to use a lightsaber, I want to use the Force. Oh, we're going to have Vader teach you the Force. Oh, that's even better, okay. And then I want to wield a blaster, I want to explore, I want to solve things. So all those things came together in a wonderful way.
Speaking of coming together, Vicki, how did the concept first start coming together? Was the team able to land on how to exist in VR with Vader and interact with him, or was it more of an exploration?
Well, it's definitely a learning experience, and we're always learning. We continue to learn even today. But when we started out on Vader Immortal, we actually approached it a lot more like one would a film. And in fact, you were a ghost, and the story was unfolding around you. And we were in development with that premise for, I think, more than a year. And finally, we had this aha moment that we were really not leaning into the strengths of VR. There's two things in VR. It's the power of presence, of being there, so that's being in a world, and the power of connection, connecting directly with a character. And in the way we were approaching it, we weren't really allowing you to have that kind of interaction. So we made a very major pivot, and we basically decided that we had to make you the center of the story, and your unfolding relationship with Vader was the journey. But it was critical that we confirm for ourselves that you actually could achieve that power of connection with a character. So we did a test, and it's actually in the final product. If you've done it, it's the scene in the cell where you're sitting in a chair, and the door opens, Vader walks toward you. You know, it's the deep breathing, the heavy footfalls, it's terrifying. And David Goyer had actually written some dialogue to be delivered as he approached you. Again, because it's VR, we could track your eyes, so he was looking directly at your eyes when he got up to you, and he delivered these lines. And no one heard the lines because it was so impactful, his presence, that it was simply all your mind could absorb. So it taught us something about pacing too. But you really did achieve that power of connection, and that gave us the confidence to pursue this new direction.
He even said, Goyer said, I wrote this and I don't even know what he's saying. It's that, cut the dialogue, you know. So.
Alyssa, this is about the time where you joined our studio. How you came in, I think, when episode 1 was already in production, and the train was on the tracks out the station a little bit. So how did you approach coming in to something that was moving quickly with 2 other episodes following?
So I think this is why Vicky hired me, because I was working on episodic development at a different company previous to coming to XLab, and so I convinced you that I would be able to come in and get her done. And really that's the delight of getting to work on Vader Immortal was, first of all, those exact moments that you're talking about, feeling small, insignificant, tiny in the face of a huge amount of presence, and then saying, well, what if I am this special person who has been recognized as the one that Vader is looking for? What do I get to do with that? And so we were working on, as we were finishing episode 1, where you get a lightsaber and you can fight in the dojo and learn to do that, we started working on episode 2, where Vader teaches you how to use the Force. That was fun. And then from there, you get to take Vader on directly, which was also, a hugely impactful moment. So for me, it was really coming in and, again, leaning into those principles of interactivity, presence, and story living to let people really feel this experience and take it away as their own.
The next project we wanted to dive into is another favorite of ours, but a sort of completely different subject matter. It's Carne y Arena. This project was directed by Alejandro Inarritu with Legendary Entertainment and our studio on the development side. Vicky, I wanted to ask if you could share a little bit about the project with the audience and talk about how we got involved.
This was actually, aside from Trials on Tatooine, this was really our first public-facing project. It was a museum installation, and as Liz said, it was conceived and directed by Alejandro Inarritu. The great thing is that he was really intrigued by VR and what kind of experience it could deliver, and he recognized that by putting you in the center of an experience, the emotional impact could be potentially significantly deeper than what you might be able to achieve in a film. And so he never envisioned this as a short film, and I think that's critical. It was VR, what we call VR first. So the experience was basically that there's a group of immigrants crossing the border from Mexico into the United States in the middle of the night, and they get caught. And it was a 6.5-minute VR experience with a sort of intro and outro in the museum installation. But it was profound. And there was a lot written about it at the time. It was the first VR selection at Cannes, and somebody wrote from the Toronto Star that it's an experience that lasts just 6.5 minutes, but it's an experience that will impact and that you will remember for a lifetime. And even today, when I think about that experience, because it's been years since I've been able to do it, since it is location-based, I still feel that the intensity of the emotion. And it went on to win a special Oscar for powerful storytelling in a new medium. And we were very, very fortunate to have had the chance to work on that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about working with a visionary, powerful director is he got to do stuff that we wouldn't have thought of doing. He approached it. He literally got actors and stand-ins together and drove everybody out to the desert and basically shot the whole thing with his DP, Chivo, famous, wonderful guy, and that became our guide for how to create this thing, and it became kind of the building block for what your path through this open world was going to be, and what the sweet spots where we wanted the visitor to go and see what was going on. And there's a great moment that you are kind of a fly on the wall with this group and just listening in on their conversations and everything. But spoiler alert, then at the very end, the Border Patrol turns their lights and their guns right on you. And people reacted to that some people fell down on their knees at that point because, they were, and other people just like froze. So it's just, super powerful moment.
Yeah, and I think one of the themes there that leads, I think, next to our next topic nicely is sort of the power of VR that you were talking about, Vicky, and the power to connect in a different way than you might in other storytelling mediums. And Harmon, I wanted to jump over to you to talk about What If. It's a more current project for us. It released last year. What If an Immersive Story is really an extension of the What If series, which is an animated Marvel Studios TV show on Disney+. We got a little clip here.
Sorry.
Of course, you'll need something to channel all that power. And I know just the one who can help. Master Wall, good to see you.
Watcher, just once I'd like you to summon me for something other than the fate of all existence. I've brought what you asked for.
So you can see in this clip here, this is a mixed reality shot. We actually, Harmon and I and the team shot this at work. We have a lovely brick room that we found to use. The cool thing about this project, it's on Apple Vision Pro, which if you haven't tried that, it's definitely really innovative and just feels really intuitive. It uses hand tracking, eye tracking to help you navigate versus using controllers. We were lucky enough to get early access to this device. And the clip we showed you here is an example of mixed reality, but it really goes from full virtual reality to mixed reality and back. And this was just an amazing property for us to play with. The series itself is aptly named, as it's really these hypothetical storylines and situations with characters that you've seen on the screen. So it was really, I know, a sandbox for the team to play in. So Harmon is the supervisor of technical art for the project. Can you talk a little bit about the creative journey and what that was like for you and the team?
Yeah, it was actually a really interesting project. We got on pretty early, and I was working at home for quite a bit of it, and was looking at this project on a computer monitor, and very much thinking of it like a film. I would think of a film. Once I actually got access to the device, my mind was completely blown. The pass-through quality, having these characters suddenly appear in my room and not just on my screen was, as I mentioned earlier, with Vader, the scale of Vader, the scale of the Watcher in your space, my cat and dog walking around the Watcher in my room, was just an epic sort of experience. And the quality of that device became such that I was often working through the device to connect to my computer in my office. And there was actually a time where I walked upstairs to have lunch, and I realized halfway through lunch that I still had the thing on my head. Just because the clarity was so incredible. It was really a revolutionary moment for, I think, the studio in being able to jump back and forth pretty seamlessly between VR and augmented reality and bringing your space in and bringing your space out at the right times in the story. Also, the eye tracking in that device is really sort of revolutionary. The ability for you to walk up to these characters in your house and have them look directly at you. And if you walk around, they're following you around and talking directly to you. That was a moment where I felt like, oh, we're getting here. We're advancing very quickly.
That's great. And I think another thing that is probably one of my favorite things we've ever done, also in the MCU, is a project called Real-Time Rocket. Both Alyssa and Harmon, you guys were on that project. And if we go to the next slide here, we'll see an image of Rocket Raccoon, and we have a little clip to sort of best illustrate what this project was. But it was an activation at the D23 Expo last year, which is just a Disney fan event in Anaheim. And we were a part of the Marvel booth. And Alyssa, I'd love you to give a little setup, and then we'll play the clip.
Yeah, no, we were set up. Basically, we wanted to provide the delight of a character meet and greet like you might have at the parks, but with a character that you're not likely to get to see there. And so we brought Rocket to life. Let's let him talk, and I can talk a little bit more about how we did it.
IGN.
Yeah, it's like
Oh, none of that sounds familiar. Is that a ship?
Kind of, yeah. You're on our website.
Oh, you know who I am then?
Of course.
The good people on the good ship IGN know who I am. So when do I get to captain this ship, the IGN?
Well, there is a TVA agent here who is, I think, about to prune me. So sorry I can't help you out. I'm getting arrested.
No, you're getting arrested?
Yeah, from the
Oh, yeah. Look, if you wind up at the kiln, I know a way out. Yeah, there's a battery on the wall. You know what? I'll get you the information later.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you so much. I will see you soon.
Yeah.
So this project was the brainchild of a section of Disney called Studio Lab, working together with ILMxLAB, working together with Marvel Studios, working together with Disney Live Entertainment. It took a lot of people to pull this off. And for ILMxLAB, this was a challenge because we had done a lot of things, but we had not done live entertainment for 11 hours a day for 3 days straight at a very well-attended conference. And so one of the bigger challenges is that we needed basically 100% uptime. We had long lines through this Marvel booth that they came up with, where everyone who walked in was a TVA agent trainee, and their job was to do a bunch of research into various time portals that were available, and the last one was getting to talk to Rocket. And so we managed to, what ILMxLAB did was we started with finding the right technology to bring Rocket to life, getting the model running in real time, and looking like a raccoon, which Jonathan can take a lot of credit for and speak more detail to. And then ultimately building the software that allowed us to run this package for 11 hours a day for 3.5 days. And ultimately, I think we entertained about 10,000 people over the course of that show.
Yeah, and I think it really went off without a hitch, and that is because Alyssa was crawling around on the floor and taping cords to the ground everywhere I saw. But the thing I think was really cool is, the fans would come in and they really were expecting a video. And so when Rocket would start calling them out and say, hey, I see you with the pink lanyard over there. What is that? They started to engage, and we have footage, and it's literally people staring at their phones going like this to this and engaging and reacting. And I think it was really happened over and over the course of the weekend. It was really special. So we have talked a lot about where we've been and what we've done, and I wanted to take some time before we get to any questions from the audience about just having a conversation about what you all are excited about for the future as sort of thought leaders in this space. So Harmon, I'm going to call on you first. We've talked a lot about character connection, world building, virtual reality, mixed reality. Where do you see all of this stuff breeding together and going from here?
Right now we're kind of in this very interesting, and it's obviously been happening for quite a long time, but it does feel like an inflection point where the software and the hardware are coming together in a way that sort of the vision of what we hoped would happen, getting yourself into a film, feeling that level of quality and presence is happening. So on the headset devices, that's absolutely happening and happening at a very, very fast pace. The thing that gets me really excited about the work that we do is we are exploring all different mechanisms of this immersive storytelling that's in ways that we could have never expected. Places like the Sphere, having entire buildings built for this type of immersion is really incredible. we're dealing with animatronics. We're doing things like the rocket demo. So really not being bound to any one set of technology or hardware, but always just looking at the best way to tell our stories and the best way to engage our audience in this new immersive way.
You want to go?
Well, I think there's an incredible power to how much more mixed media we get to play with, whether it's Rocket talking to you from behind a screen, whether it's these more portable devices that allow you to take mixed reality with you wherever you're going, and especially with some of the combinations of mixed reality and VR, where the place that I am right now can be transformed into a place I could never imagine. And I really think those frontiers of interactive storytelling, plus bringing stories to people in places they didn't expect them, where they thought they were watching, but in fact they will have a chance to do. I think there's a lot of really interesting innovation happening in that space, and I am really looking forward to seeing where we go with it.
If we can get the next slide on the screen. Oops. One before. That one. This is a piece of concept art that reflects something that I'm really excited about, and it's that idea of AR story living at city or world scale. This is like geolocated story vignettes throughout an environment, and we're starting to, the AR glasses are going to be a reality in the years ahead. So that's one of the things we've been working on, but in the meantime, we've been using phones and iPads to sort of simulate what that experience would be like. But we're really interested in outdoors, transforming the world that we live in. And in order to make it really cinematic, we've been also experimenting with cloud streaming. So we created an experiment, we called it Jigsaw, because we were sort of piecing together a lot of different kinds of technologies. And our goal was really a seamless blending of the digital and physical worlds, which we were able to achieve because of the cloud streaming. And as a result, what happens is that you're getting an interplay between the digital and physical world where shadows are correct. Reflections between the two are also correct. And those kinds of details, we don't always understand what it is that makes it feel seamless, but those are the kinds of details that make this incredibly believable. So I'm very excited about that future. And I guess the other thing I'm really excited about, it's funny because I've been in the business for so long, that there was a period when the term transmedia was popular and introduced, and then it became like nobody talked about transmedia anymore because they didn't like the term, and now it's back again. So I'm very interested in transmedia or cross-platform storytelling. And that's really possible when you have a rich world filled with compelling characters, and so many stories can unfold. So if you approach that kind of design in a holistic way, so you're clear about how to use the strengths of the individual platforms, and then create a sort of narrative construct that allows you to move across devices, then I think we really can achieve scenarios where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And we've done a little bit of that, but I think that there's a lot more that we can do. I think the future is incredibly exciting.
It is, but it's not coming fast enough. I mean, this is a weird industry. 10 years ago, we were looking at all the brand new devices that were coming out in all the different ways. And now we're at kind of one of those touch points again now. It's like everybody's putting, all the big tech companies are bringing, their power to bear and bringing out new stuff. I'm getting old. It's still not happening fast enough, but I want it to, I want it now. I want the toys. But one of the things that is exciting for me is we've been able to experiment a little. Alyssa talked a little bit about this with bringing interactivity to more of the home, like your TV, your computer, or whatever. So there's definitely for some people, especially, the devices present a roadblock of a little bit. You know, they haven't always been super easy to figure out and use, and there's not. Some of them were expensive and are expensive. I think the more we can give you things to do that are more, as we've been calling it, lean back experiences, where you can choose how much you want to dive in, where you can, but that if you want to dive in a little, you can actually affect the story, or you can actually choose how you want to consume that story and in what order. Those things excite me about the future. But now,
I just wanted to add one other thing. Our colleagues from ILM, we're all part of ILM, but these are our colleagues who have come from the live events, film, and television side, and we are now integrating much more closely, because what we're seeing is a desire for a hybrid between what we've experienced on the film and television, more linear content, and the interactive content. So it's, I also feel like that gives us a breadth that we haven't had before. And just a little plug, Ben Morris, who was the creative director on ABBA Voyage in London, which if you've seen it is, or if you haven't seen it, you absolutely should. It's extraordinary. And he's doing a panel on Wednesday morning. But I do think that this sort of expanded capability, as we take what has been sort of a small team and reintegrate it into the larger ILM, it really helps us achieve ILM's vision of being great creative partners, you know, visual storytellers, and hopefully aspirational leaders in the industry.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point, and it's obviously really relevant for South by Southwest, the music space. And for me personally, I'm a huge music fan, always have been, retired blogger, and really grateful to have this experience with you all today at this amazing event. But I'm looking for new ways to experience music, experience shows. I can't go to 2 or 3 shows a week anymore, sadly. So finding ways to bring that to your home, or more accessible things like ABBA that you can go to during the day, that would be great. So.
What, do you not want to stay out late anymore?
Not every night. But yeah, I know we have a few minutes for questions from the audience, so I think we're going to go ahead and get that fired up on the screen here. I don't think you guys will see it, but we'll read them to you. So the first question is, what sort of changes do you foresee for VR gaming in the next few years?
I think we're already starting to see it, and it's the combination of integrating mixed reality with VR to transform stories, to transform spaces, to make everything, to make the memory space that I'm building in real time. I am in this room, you are real people, we are interacting, and add a layer on top of that that's never really been quite as immersively possible before. So for me, I think mixing those modalities and playing around with what you can do there, I think that's where we're going, and I'm really excited about getting there.
I would say there is some devices recently that have come out that make sort of the overhead of putting on a VR set of goggles much lighter. The sort of lightweight glasses version of things. We had some devices at my house with my family, and the ability to take something off and hand it to someone else. There was a particular app that was a drawing app, and we were drawing pictures and handing these glasses back and forth in a very seamless way. And if multiple people had those glasses, they could see the work together. So that sort of lightweight experience is something I'm really interested in, along with the super high fidelity work that we all love. It's that balancing and jumping back and forth between something that feels very accessible and shareable, and something that's a little more high fidelity and sort of closed off in a VR world that is really exciting. And some of the devices are able to do both.
Great, yeah, so the next question is, it's clear that immersive tech is an amazing experience, but it's not mass market yet. When do you think it will truly go mainstream?
I actually think that we're going to start to see it go mainstream in the next couple of years. And what I feel is going to be behind that is the device manufacturers have really seen this primarily as a gaming device. But I'm hearing a broadening of the vision to be more entertainment focused, of which gaming would obviously be a key part. But as Mark was saying before, I think that we have to conceive of a portfolio of experiences, some of which are lean back, some of which are, jump all the way in. But that broader entertainment focus, I think, is going to attract people who, up to this point, have been resistant to, adopt to put on the headsets or glasses, et cetera. And then, as Jonathan said, certainly as those devices become lighter and easier to put on and take off and share, that is going to be critical. So I'm hopeful that it's in the next year or two, probably 2 years.
The next question is, the next question is, currently the experience is geared to more one-to-one. Do you foresee a multi-viewer experience where we all have a role to play in the same room?
I mean, I think The Void did a really good job of that while it was out there. Secrets of the Empire let you, or Ralph Breaks VR, or, that other one.
Avengers Damage
Control. Oh, yeah, Avengers Damage Control let you be Avengers together. And I do think we're getting there. I do think we're stepping towards a world where more people in the same family might have devices, and more people across the country might have devices who can interact with each other in great ways. And to me, the power of story living comes from the interaction, whether that is what you can do or who you can do it with. And I think we're well on our way there.
My family has multiple devices. I wonder why. And it's kind of funny. It's getting to a point where my kids will bring over their friends, and they will bring headsets over. In fact, the other day, my son was sitting at the dinner table, and he was telling me how his friends were all getting a fund together to buy one of their friends a headset so that they could play with them in these particular games that they love. And they're in the same space, actually communicating with each other, saying, "Hey, go around the corner," and they are all participating in a bigger game with more people. So it is something that a lot of the younger generations that's how they go to the playground together. They will say, "Hey, after school, let's meet at the Ferris wheel," and it's not the Ferris wheel at the physical Ferris wheel. It's a virtual Ferris wheel that they will ride together and talk about and play. And I think we have to limit it to some degree, because it's a world that's unlike anything they've ever experienced, and they really just want to be a part of it. And it's really interesting to see them physically in the same space, but virtually in another space, all playing together.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of my favorite topics is actually how Jonathan's children are hacking the devices and the crazy things that they're doing with it. Moving on here. Sorry, the question's changed around. How do you envision technology evolving in the coming years to eliminate the necessity of wearing a toaster with a battery life of only 1 to 2 hours?
I mean, that's happening now. I think between Google, Meta, who knows what Apple's doing, but probably they will continue making it lighter and smaller. But there's a ton of exciting new devices coming out that, as Harmon was saying, they're more shareable, they're more easily wearable. It's all the stuff we've been asking for. So I do think there's a lot of hope in the next coming couple years for things that are much easier to deal with.
It's surprising how those little differences, like the wireless nature of a headset, can be. I mean, it doesn't seem like a big deal, but having a cable come out of your headset and connecting you to a device is limiting. It takes a little bit more work to get it set up, and being able to throw something on, and that's one advancement. There's a million more that are going to happen, and that we're really excited about.
The next question is, you mentioned you were 30 years ahead of the game. How can I convince higher ups that our entity should be an early adopter when I have no decision-making power? And Vicky, I feel like this is a great question for you.
I love this question. You know, this is where, I mean, you've heard it before, show, don't tell. And one of the things that's been absolutely critical for our success and for being around for 10 years is having had the ability to continue to experiment throughout that time so that we could show people what's possible. As Mark was saying at the beginning with Trials on Tatooine, we did a test with the Millennium Falcon overhead and, you know, the gangplank opening and R2-D2 rolling down. It was enough to get people to be excited about doing what was, I think, you know, maybe a 5-minute experience. So that was a step forward. That led to Vader Immortal. But in every case, we have done some sort of prototype that gives people an ability to see what's possible. And you know, some of the bigger visions, like what I was showing with the that Singapore slide, where it was, you know, AR story living at city scale or world scale. That's a huge idea. We call it epic AR. But in order to start people down the path, we created a little experiment that was 4 vignettes that were geolocated on our campus. And again, I think by seeing, you can help, you know, you can help push the vision forward. The other thing is that, you know, we have had incredible partnerships throughout our 10 years. Meta has been an amazing partner. They shared our vision early on with Vader Immortal. They funded Vader Immortal, Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, and they continue to show, I think, a lot of vision and insight that is very aligned with our own. We had a collaboration with Magic Leap, with The Void. Those kinds of partnerships where there is an alignment of goals, but perhaps not exactly the same goals, that also has been key to our success. So forging those kind of relationships, I think, is another key factor.
Yeah, and I would say, you know, when you're thinking about, like, I know for us internally, we're all in entertainment, but the space we're in is really quite novel. And so we spend a lot of time thinking about how do we approach these internal conversations with our higher ups? How do we communicate what we want in a way that makes sense to them and they can understand the advantages? So I think really being thoughtful about how you're approaching that in that audience is going to help make that more successful.
Or just talk really loud and wave your hands around a lot.
We don't use the Miller method anymore. Harmon?
I don't think it can be understated how the leadership of both Vicky and Mark have allowed us to do these experiments and really push those boundaries. I have always been, ever since I've been at ILM, really surprised at how thoughtful we are of the projects that we're choosing to go after. They have to be pushing that envelope. They have to be pushing us forward. And you know, it's very different than other business models that I've been in, where it's all about the revenue. Here, it's all about learning and growth and finding new ways forward. Which
we like revenue too.
Revenue's not bad, but I mean, the balancing of that has been something both of you have been crucial in at our studio, and it's known throughout the studio that the innovation aspect and that storytelling aspect is our primary goal.
For the next question, I'd love to kick this to you, Alyssa. You have a great physical playground available to you at Disney World. How would you bring your games to a broader audience in a theme park across platforms?
I think the opportunities to just have more interaction, just have more things that I can do, characters talking to me, entertainment while waiting in a line, opportunities to spend a moment looking around and seeing something that maybe everyone else doesn't see right away, and you can bring their attention to it. I think the parks are such an amazing playground, but the world is an amazing playground for XR right now. I was up in the Fairmont yesterday checking out some people's experiences, and people are playing, and I think that's the heart of it. Like, how do we bring more play to more people more of the time?
I think devices then again, they are really going to help. I think right now, for phone-based AR stuff in the parks, it's not a great marriage. People are already having to use their phone to wayfind in the park and figure out what their fast passes are and do all that stuff, and then trying to combine that with a lot of AR is a hard thing. I think as you see the wearables and you know, Imagineering spends a ton of money making beautiful worlds like Galaxy's Edge. They don't want everybody walking through the park like this, but as wearables become more ubiquitous and easier to use, I think you're going to see the option of adding a layer that isn't there now, and that's exciting. And again, faster.
One of the exciting things for me is the inverse, is bringing the theme park to your house. And we do, a lot of our design decisions and conversations are very much around Imagineering and how they would solve a particular problem. It's particularly in the multi-user experience. How would we get a player to go where we want them to go? How would Imagineering approach this? What would a park do? And I do think it's a real opportunity to take some of that, you know, travel away. People can actually bring parts of those park-like experiences into their home. And that's something we, I think, are really looking after and looking at.
Alyssa, you might want to just mention Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, because I think that's a perfect example of working with the real world and the digital world, but not duplicating them.
Yeah. So,
well, what I was, all right,
you try, Vicki.
So she was the producer on Tales from the Galaxy's Edge, but Tales from the Galaxy's Edge was us basically allowing visitors to experience what was outside of Galaxy's Edge, Black Spire Outpost, in the wilds of Batu, but it was still still the same story premise. And in fact, we made sure that when we built out the world, we weren't duplicating it. Again, I don't think there was any place in our experience that you could actually physically go in the park, but they made sense. Like it was the back room of Mubo's workshop.
And you could look down
on
the park from Cecil Slack's cantina. Thank you, Vicki. I see where you were going now. And that really allowed us to use the park as a jumping off point in both time and space to an adventure in the wilds of Batu, to adventures at different time frames where you could experience, you know, learning the Force from a very different point of view. And I think that kind of extensive storytelling is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, we've got time for one more question, which is one I really love, so thanks for whoever submitted this. How do you balance the amount of decisions that an audience member can make that will truly shift the narrative direction of the experience?
Yeah, how do we do that? We've been working with a lot of different structures. The one that I like is it's choice-based navigation through an experience where you decide what area you go to, what rooms you go to, maybe what characters you talk to, in what order, and so all of these choices branch the story, but there's a central spine to the narrative that you keep on coming back to after you make those choices. So if I go and talk to certain characters in a certain order, I still end up back in the main place and the story still proceeds. I don't really get letting audience decide everything about the story. I still think we have to, you know, control the main plot and the beginning, middle, and end, but how they weave their way through it, I think, is where it gets fun, and letting people have a different experience in the narrative as they go through it, so that the next time they come back, or if their family member does it, they're going to have a unique experience, but at the end they end up with the same story.
And then saying yes to the player as much as possible, giving them a positive reinforcement for doing what they're doing, because it's all about the interaction. It's all about the exploration.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you all so much for joining us today and taking time out of your busy schedule. And don't forget to go see Mr. Ben Morris, 11:30 on Wednesday. The panel's called Seeing Sound, if you want to look at it in your app. Thank you.
Thank you.